in 10 years, we'll all be living in the metaverse and whatever. So, I'll eat my words then. But right now, AI, it's
Or in the metaverse, you will eat them virtually. You won't actually eat them.
right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, but today, AI, it's like it's.
Welcome to the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for CX leaders who are looking to drive value from investing in their customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today to Greg Kihlström, who is a very successful author and thought leader in the CX space and someone I always enjoy collaborating with. Thanks for joining us today, Greg.
Yeah, thanks so much. Looking forward to doing this.
It's always a pleasure. This is a bit of a home and away. I was on your podcast and now you're on mine.
I know. We're good to be able to reciprocate here.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. So I guess just to get started, you've written I think more than 10 books on CX, and the most recent one was the House of the Customer. But your podcast is about the Agile brand. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Agile brand is and what does that mean?
Yeah, definitely. So, I come from a marketing background, really, and marketing and technology background. And so, I owned an agency. I sold that agency about 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And, we did a lot of branding work. We did a lot of marketing work. And, I wanted to write a book about what I learned about not only branding, but really where I saw the practice of marketing and now customer experience going. And so, to me, branding and brands really started out as just a means of recognition of, differentiating one product from another. But, much more recently, turned into, how do brands create the best experience for their customers? But it's got to go beyond not only how do brands create great experiences for their customers and even their employees, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. But now it's how do they adapt to continual change, continual rising customer expectations, continually rising employee expectations, and just the change that happens in the world, whether that's good change or challenges that we're all facing. And so this idea of, I also happen to be an Agile certified coach. And so for me, there's big A Agile, which is things like Scrum and all of that. But to me, Agile is broader than simply a set of practices and interpretations of Agile principles and stuff like that. It's how do we meaningfully adapt and be resilient to change over time? And to me, that's what an Agile brand is, it's got to have the recognition, it's got to have a great experience, but then it's got to do so much more than that and be able to stand the test of time.
I think that's really powerful. I like to say that, we move from a world in which you built brands more through advertising to a world where you build brands through experiences. And there, you still have advertising, but the clock speed at which we experiment and which we do things is much faster than it used to be. And a lot of what we're doing with experience requires constant experimentation with data and adjustments. So like the Agile brand, I think captures that, is that it just, you're constantly changing and evolving and iterating as a brand, as opposed to you launch something, you put it out there and there's long lag times before you get feedback.
Yeah, well, and even the definition of good experience has evolved quite a bit, even over the last few years. I mean, think about the pandemic alone. What's a good experience during the pandemic versus prior to that, or growth of mobile device, being comfortable with mobile device usage, and all of this stuff. So it's like even having a good experience in 2015, it's almost who cares because we're in 2023 and the world has already changed. So it's that being continually listening, continually adapting to what good experience is going to be now as well as in the future.
So in the past, people talked about Agile as a set of rituals and practices. It sounds like, yes, that's still true. There are behaviors, there are skills, there are practices that you want to adopt in the organization. but you're using the word agile a little more, flexibly, more agile-esque than, like you said, capital A agile. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's not that I've worked with plenty of Scrum teams, and I've done I've worked in organizations that the at the enterprise level, the safe agile is a different kind of flavor of that for those less familiar. But yeah, I tend to, and I have some mentors in the agile space as well that will attest to this as well. Is like the more dogmatic and just rigid you get with agile, I mean, the name gives it away, right? It's like it's meant to be flexible and it's meant to be adaptive. So as soon as we start applying this dogmatic approach to agile, it kind of defeats the purpose. And so I think it's helpful to know the steps and the moves and what to do, so what kind of what latitude you have. But you can't be so rigid that different organizations work differently.
My daughter's into theater, and the choreographer said at a session the other day, recruiting new students at the college, we want people of all levels of dance to feel comfortable applying. So what you're saying is you don't have to be an expert dancer to participate. Different levels of skill can participate in agility.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and actually, maybe a different way of looking at it, using a dance metaphor. I done a few things in my career. I actually shot a documentary on ballroom dancing like years and years ago, very early in my career. And the metaphor that I often use is like by the way, I cannot do any type of ballroom dancing whatsoever myself. Just caveat there, but it's important to know the moves as a ballroom dance. If you know the waltz and if you know the tango and all of these things, it's like you can get very, very creative if you know where your feet are supposed to go. It doesn't mean that everyone dances the same. It means that you know where your feet are supposed to go, and then you can be creative about everything else. And I look at Agile and Agile principles and Agile methods and things like that as a way to, let's not think about some of the stuff that is just, yes, we need to iterate, we need to continually improve. Let's not overthink that part of it. Let's accept some of that so that we can be strategic and creative and all that.
So I'm going to connect this to culture, and then also, your most recent book in a minute. I like to think in culture that because you're trying to evolve mindsets, behaviors, skills, and grow relationship networks in a company, that it's helpful to connect your cultural evolution efforts to a cornerstone discipline like agility, agile product management, or human-centered design, or quality management, or data science. And that by linking it to one of these other areas, you drive easier buy-in and momentum in the organization around adopting the behaviors and skills you want. So, it sounds like you're a proponent that agility is a key cornerstone discipline that a lot of brands should focus on for their culture evolution efforts.
Yeah, I think it gets the right people aligned as well. And, I think it's abstract enough that it stands the test of time in my opinion. So it's not just we're focused on this project, and then once we're done with the project, oh, wow, I don't really have a purpose here at the company. Focusing on agility means, yeah, there's always something new. There's always the next sprint or whatever, to use the lingo. But I do, to your point, I think having a shared and common purpose and, definition of success is just, it's critical. Otherwise, everybody's kind of marching to their own, I guess, to continue the music metaphor, like they're marching to their own beat, and that's only gonna last for so long.
Very cool. Now I have your book here, The House of the Customer, which I enjoyed reading, and did a review of it in the collection of reviews I've done in my JourneySpark consulting website. If you go to the What We Think under book reviews, you can find the review there. It's a great book, so congrats on that. And
oh, thank you.
I really loved the, you have a chapter in there actually about the importance of culture. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, why you put that in there, and how do you see culture and CX going together?
Yeah, definitely. And, I use the metaphor of the house in the book as far, to really kind of differentiate between the different pieces of what it takes to create a great customer experience. And so, as you well know, working in the enterprise space, there's a lot going on. Just saying, let's make a good CX is very majorly oversimplifies that process. So I split it up into all these component parts, and we can certainly talk about some of those as well. But the foundation of the house is what I call an agile customer-centric culture, which there's a lot packed in there. I mean, we talked about the agile part and the flexibility there. Customer-centric, that to me, that's that shared and common purpose of, yes, we need to create a great culture and a great employee experience, but one of the ways that we can do that is by aligning to, let's all work on behalf of our customers. And I've done some work in the space of employee motivation and rewards and things like that. And what I've seen is when we have a shared purpose, and let's make that the customer, creating a better customer experience, but customer experience can be, and creating a better customer experience can be not only the motivation, but it can be the reward. And so, when we know that we've done better, we're all aligned towards that. It's not my marketing channel or my department was successful. It's we were all successful in creating something better. And so having that and having leaders really aligned in that customer centricity, I think can really result in some great things.
What you're talking about is the employee experience, the EX customer experience, EX CX intersection, and how important that is to creating a vibrant culture that's evolving, but delivering value to customers, delivering value to employees. That intersection is what makes people proud of their work. Seth Godin said it really well. Think of experience like a gift. Your customers are getting a gift. Your employees are giving that gift of experience to your customers. And that's actually rewarding and a source of pride for people. And, I find this notion of the gift of experience to be really motivating. I think it's very powerful in culture to get that intrinsic motivation of your people because they feel proud of the connection they're giving to the gift they're giving to the customer.
Yeah, and I think it's more meaning. It doesn't mean that the extrinsic stuff is not. I mean, people need to live. They need salaries. They need, vacation time and perks and all those kinds of things. But they don't stay at a company solely because of a salary and those things. They stay at a company because they have purpose and they're giving. I love that analogy as well. Like when it's rewarding to be able to give something and give something that is, well received and things. And so, yeah, it's a virtuous cycle there. And I think the best kind.
And I like to talk about building a movement in the company, whether the movement connects to Agile or also other cornerstone disciplines. I agree Agile is an important one together with others like human-centered design and potentially things like quality management or other disciplines. That you're building a movement where you're generating positive momentum, where people are drawing energy from one another and they're adopting behaviors and it's spreading in the organization. And this is what leadership's about, right? And this is what change management about, is how to kind of spread the movement, how to have it take off more. What do you think is most important to achieve that momentum in a movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. I mean, leaders need to lead, and they need to lead by example. And I think what definitely rubs employees the wrong way is when leaders keep saying, we got to treat our customers well, and we're, our number one strategic priority is customer experience. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to doing, and when it comes to prioritizing things, it's, oh, well, let's do this instead, and this other very tactical or this very purely financial driven.
It's like you're saying, and stories matter, but actually real behavior is more important than stories because people see what you do.
Yeah. And they quickly learn, oh yeah, that's what we say, right? To your point. But what we really do is whatever, is going to make us an extra dollar at the expense of the long-term value of the customer, or just, whatever the boss decides is the priority of the day, despite that, saying we love our customers on the wall, or whatever it might.
It's like, they say 80% of communication is nonverbal. Well, what we're talking about is the same thing on a macro level. Like, people see what you do. And, you can use all the words in the world. You can have a vision statement. If the behavior is incongruent with that, then the behavior is what really matters, not what people say. One of the areas that I've always had fun collaborating with you, is about the marketing technology and the adoption. Like, we're talking about movements and the adoption of technology. And now AI is an area we've been spending time together. What's your perspective on, AI and the impact it's having, and what's real now versus where's it headed? Like, what are your thoughts? Pretty open question.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. Short answer. I think the interesting thing, and anybody that's been in the space for a while, we've seen trends come and go, and there's a lot of hype. Marketers are easily marketed to, and just like salespeople are easily sold. So it's like, there's a lot of hype, and marketers get very excited about the shiny object. But I think what's different with AI is that there are immediate practical applications for AI in very meaningful ways across the entire spectrum, not from end customer to internal customer to the business at large. And I think that's what feels really different about this versus, I'll say it, like metaverse and NFTs and other things like that, that again, I'm sure, in 10 years we'll all be living in the metaverse and whatever. So, I'll eat my words then. But right now, AI, it's
Or in the metaverse, you will eat them virtually. You won't actually eat them.
right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, but today, AI, it's like there are very tactical things that you can do. I mean, you can use things like ChatGPT and and those tools, kind of those surface layer like AI tools that allow us to do some things a little more quickly. But I think where I get excited is where it's being more deeply integrated and customized at the enterprise scale. And so, large language models that are very customized to a particular product, enterprise, all of those kinds of things, because that's where I see a partnership between AI. I know that's kind of anthropomorphizing things, but it's like there's a partnership between AI and humans. And I think I'm an optimist when it comes to this stuff. I don't think we're gonna hit the Terminator scenario for at least a few decades from now. Like, I think there's a real opportunity for humans and AI to partner together to do some real meaningful stuff and let humans actually enjoy their work better and do more meaningful work. And I do think some jobs are going to be replaced, but I think they're going to be then spawn other jobs that are more meaningful and different. Just like any new technological shift. I mean, there's always this talk about, it's going to displace a lot of jobs. Well, yes, but it also creates a whole new sector or sectors and things like that.
Well, I think I agree there's a lot of opportunity. I'm an optimist also. I think that a lot of the early focus was on personalization, like we worked on together, with the ability to kind of thin slice things more and more and more with better data. Marketing's much more data driven than it used to be, and e-commerce and loyalty and personalization are all about data driven approaches, and AI is powering a lot of that, across industries. And what's happening now is we're able to not only personalize more data-driven marketing, but we're able to dramatically lower the cost of creating content and of doing work that previously took a lot of human effort, which is making it much more impactful with AI than just self-service or chatbot or recommendation engines. It's actually changing the body of work itself in more fundamental ways that, if done really well, doesn't just lower cost, it actually increases the ease of doing business for employees and customers, which you can then take those savings and reinvest in new things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personalization is. I think it's certainly something. I know we both work in that space quite a bit. I think it's the most exciting thing that I'm involved in right now is just that whole idea from, not just simple personalization or like almost substitution of, replacing a name or something, but true orchestration of the experience from start to finish. And to your other point, generating content at scale that is personalized, which mean, it just would be impossible for humans to do that work. And so there was just a missed opportunity there. So yeah, I think all, and then also, the real-time analytics and understanding and the feedback loop of it all. It's not just us orchestrating and saying, hey, we think a customer should go here, then here, then here. It's in real time understanding things like next best action and adapting in real time to showing the right thing at the right time on the right channel, all of that. It's like, it's the dream from, a few years ago that we were all talking about could happen in theory. Like, it's a lot more possible now with these tools.
Well, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about with personalization or more effective marketing and content experiences is you're leveraging data to do with experience what we've been doing with advertising, which is next best content, next best action. You're inserting something in a much more targeted way based on data, but that presumes you have all the data. That presumes that. So I think there's a lot of discussion about data-driven marketing, but I'd love for you to talk a bit more about like how do you actually get the foundation in place with the data and the technology to be able to do this? Because we can talk all we want about personalization, but if you don't actually have the foundation in place. Now, I don't mean this to mean you can't work in an agile way and do things quickly. I'm not an advocate for taking 3 years to get there, but you need to have data to be able to do this. So how do you make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any enterprise that wants to make big moves in AI has to have, to your point, that foundation. And so, I've just started talking about it in terms of, it's people, process, platforms. I'm starting to couch it in terms of people, process, data, and platforms, making data equal and, in parallel with those other things. Because to your point, if you don't have it, you have to, well, it's not that they don't have it either, right? So I think, the whole big data, that was the other hype cycle, a decade or more ago. So they have the data, it's connecting the data, and it's understanding what to do with it and having the tools to do things with it. And, it's requesting access to this, even within the same organization, like getting access to a piece of data that could be really helpful to do something like a next best action or something. And so, yeah, I think in doing AI well, beyond just the superficial, like ask ChatGPT what to write for XYZ, like in doing it in a meaningful way, yeah, you've got to connect those dots. And that's getting teams to work together that have worked together, but not in such a collaborative way. I think marketers and CX professional, instead of this idea of like requesting something from the data team or the engineering team, it's like really working hand in hand together, because the data teams are going to understand what they have access to and what the opportunities are better than the marketers and the CX professionals themselves. So, there needs to be this dialogue and not just like, let me, give a support ticket for this piece of information or something like.
Well, if you bring it back to this notion of being an agile brand, what are you trying to do? You're trying to, agile is all about the definition of done and breaking problems down into smaller chunks so that you can drive more rapid progress against specific outcomes and increments, right? And working in sprints. So if your people are actually working together and collaborating, you're not throwing stuff over the fence back and forth. You're collaborating on what can we do in this sprint? What data do we have? What do we need to do? And you're constantly moving things forward on things that can be done in a sprint and making progress. And that's collaboration. That's changing the way people work in the organization, as opposed to just a kind of more transactional way of operating, like which is a more, industrial age mindset.
Yeah, completely agree. And at at the more micro level, even within a marketing or CX team, that has to happen with creating great omni-channel experiences too. So it's like what you just said. I mean, that's at the macro, data engineering, marketing, CX. Everybody's got to work together. But it could even start in a marketing team where an email team and a social media team and a e-commerce team are completely siloed. That might provide the model for how that works across the organization too.
Very often, like people will, because and this is human nature, like someone will start a job or someone will come into a new position, and the first thing they'll think about is how to get organized, like how to move boxes around on the org chart or to grab turf. And I think it's very counterproductive, but I understand why people do it, in organizations. But that this focus on org structure and org design as opposed to how work gets done and what the playbook is and how you collaborate. Because no matter where you put something in the organization, you still need collaboration. There will always be, if it's in sales or marketing, or if it's in service or sales, or if it's in IT or marketing, no matter where you put it, you still need to collaborate, right?
Yeah. And I wonder, there's probably a lot in what you just said that to explore from a psychological perspective. But, I think some of that has to do with finding purpose and work and meaning in what you do. And I think it may be maybe a bit of a paradigm shift of, one of the principles of Agile I love most is what you already mentioned, which is the collaborative aspect of it, and that we work as a team and we work as a team of equals, and there's, democracy in there of how work gets done and things like that. And so it is a little bit different than the very hierarchical position that many and most in an enterprise are going to find themselves. So it doesn't mean that one is completely thrown out. But it does mean that you look at yourself in terms of the customer journey and how we're serving the customer. I mean, that's I touch on that a little bit in the book as well as just this idea of customer centricity of like let's think a little bit more about that and a little bit less inward gazing.
When you think about then this notion of being data driven and more outcomes focused in marketing, where do you see the most upside now? Where do you think companies in CX should focus if they want to be data driven, they want to be outcomes focused? What would your advice be of where to get started and where to focus?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of effort has been spent in CX on looking at the lagging indicators of Net Promoter Score and CES, CSAT, all of those things. I'm not gonna. I've said things about all of those already. Nothing is all good. Nothing is all bad either. I think the real opportunity, though, and given the fact that we do have AI that lets us do a lot more processing and mining of data, is matching the leading indicators with the lagging indicators and really understanding in real time and near real time, what is going on and why, and to do something about it, if not in real time, in near real time. And I think, CX professional, like definitely, look at the survey results. I think we're over surveyed for what it's worth. I don't know. I would imagine, I don't know on average how many surveys I get a day, but it's the fact that I can say I get surveys per day is a problem. And because I don't buy that many things per day. So, there's an issue there, but we have access to all of this other information that can actually help us make sense of that information as well. And I don't think it's being leveraged nearly as much as it is. And I come from marketing, and we're a lot that real time and that those leading indicators are, I think that's something that marketing and CX can collaborate a lot more on.
I think this is a really fertile area to explore a little more. One thing I'll share with the audience that you and I have talked about a lot, that I borrowed this language from Qualtrics so a lot of the collaboration I've done with them. So I'll give them credit. This notion of X data and O data, right? So like X data is experience data, and O data is operational data. And what you're talking about I'm just putting labels on it, is the survey data is a form of X data that we're over reliant on to build experience insights. It's not that experience data as survey data is bad. It's that it has long lag times, it's limited sample times, there's wear out, there's bias, there's all kinds of issues that you have to manage when you use survey data. There's also another limitation which doesn't get as much attention, which is that it focuses on words, and 95% of communications is actually of thinking is actually unconscious. And so if by focusing on language, you're inherently limiting the feedback. And what's really powerful about AI now is when you turn to the unstructured data as opposed to the survey data, all of the social media, call center verbatims, messaging, chatbots, and yes, the open-ended questions in the surveys. And now you've got Zoom meetings. There's all these new sources of unstructured data. You can actually mine. Yes, you're still looking at words, but you can actually get at the deeper meaning more easily than you can in a survey question. And you can complement that with other qualitative insights like ethnography or deep metaphor solicitation or other things that allow you to get at more of the meaning than the survey alone. So I think companies are way too narrowly focused on the surveys, and they need to think more broadly about the meaning of the experience using the qual and the quant together. So it's go deeper on the qual and then combine it with AI-driven insights, which are more focused on the unstructured data. That actually can also get to much more rapid and frequent insights. And especially if you combine it with the O data, which is like what people are doing, their behavior. Those are much more real-time indicators than a survey will ever be.
Yeah, completely agree. And to your main point as well, it's not that you throw out one and only use one versus the other. It's that they actually work very powerfully together, and we have the ability to act on them very quickly now, as opposed to, before it was very difficult to tie all of that stuff together and to use sentiment analysis and all of those other things. And, now it's like, now it's certainly possible to do, and not just to report on it, to understand it internally, but to act on it in real time and actually change what the customer is seeing and experiencing as they're doing it. And I think that's another powerful thing with the operational data is, okay, the customer is doing this and we know all of this stuff about them. Why do we keep giving them the exact same experience as someone completely different that wants something, completely different in the first place?
I love the framework in Lean Startup of a Lean Startup has to get two questions right: the right customer with the right value proposition. And what you're doing is you're iterating and pivoting constantly on those two questions. And what you're highlighting is this, cultural experimentation-oriented approach of constantly iterating on these questions. Do I have the right customer? Do I have the right value proposition? Let me work in an agile way, get much more frequent feedback. That's what we mean by large companies behaving like startups or companies becoming more agile, is this iterative, constant culture of experimentation using data. Was it Domino's is an e-commerce company that sells pizza, right? Like that's I think how they refer to themselves. Things have changed. If a pizza company is an agile company.
Yeah, and I think to highlight that a little bit more too, from a leadership perspective, it means, when we talk about experimentation, it means being okay with people getting the unexpected results. And so, I don't like to even use the term failure, because I don't think you fail if you learn something, right? But there is this culture inside of a lot of, not even necessarily large inside of lots of organizations, big and small, of, well, yeah, you can experiment all you want as long as every experiment is successful and we never lose money and we never, we always achieve exactly what we want. Well, that's not experimentation. I don't know what that is, but that's not experimentation. And so, I do think it requires a lot of learning, and it requires, if you're a large enough organization, it requires a lot of experimentation all at the same time, the well-constructed tests, but still experimenting a lot so that you're constantly learning. And yes, everybody's okay with a lot of those experiments not going to plan. And that comes from the top too.
What you're highlighting is the CX and culture connection. That, if you really want to be good at customer experience, the culture is so paramount because it's the way you work on the customer experience. I like to say that there are three journeys. It's part of the name JourneySpark Consulting. There's the customer journey, which gets a lot of attention. There's the company is on. You talked about being customer centric. Your company is on a journey to become more agile, to be more customer centric, to drive change at your company. That takes leadership from many people, not just the CEO. And then you've got the employees on a journey. The employee is on a learning journey. They're developing, they're growing, they're learning new skills. All three journeys matter, right? And the culture actually is so critical to those journeys that I find like it's often most rewarding and fun to work on CX with a culture lens, because it has more impact and it's more meaningful to people at the company.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's, I mean, you can, if you do that well, it's a win-win-win, right? It's, company, employee, and customer. And, I think that's, I love to try to find that whenever I can.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. If you had, advice for the audience about, what resources to focus on, where to go to learn, other than read your is it 11 books now?
There's a few. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't gone through all of them myself, but I'm really enjoying them. They're really good books.
Thank you.
What would your advice be for, CX leaders who are on this journey? What has been good for you? Where do you think they can focus their energy to kind of continue that learning journey and their impact?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to something we talked about, about midway through, which is just start following through on your actions. And, the words matter, but the actions mean more. And so, when you say something as a priority, follow through on it and make sure your team follows through on it. And if it's not a priority, the people will know by your actions. And so I would start there and make experience and make culture a priority, of course, but do it by acting on it, not just saying it.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. I'm going to add one thing to that, which is ultimately, if you want to drive change, you need shared understanding, solutions, and action, right? And what you're highlighting is you need to get to action. You can't just cycle on ideas or have a lot of verbiage. But the way people learn and grow is often through conversation. So, like actually as a leader, fostering these conversations, encouraging them, being open to what comes out of them, those are cultural behaviors, right? And actually trying to be intentional about engaging in these conversations about CX and EX, encouraging your people to do it, creating space for that to happen. And that's what's great about Agile, is it creates more frequent, open, accountable conversations happening with lots of velocity, that you actually get results because you have this more transparent examination constantly of what's really going on. The conversation matters, and the actions, you're right. It's not just the conversation. You got to drive towards action.
Yeah, but I also, I love what you're saying, because leaders don't always have the right answers, and they don't always have to have the right answer. I learn every time I talk with anyone. So, I know that from myself. I've been a leader several times myself, and I think I got better as a leader the more I learned that I didn't have all the right answers. I just, I needed smart people to be able to talk with and work with. And sometimes those people reported to me and sometimes I reported to them. But I totally agree with you that the conversation is very important.
What can people do to learn more about your ideas and your work? Where should they go to get more information?
Sure. Yeah. So two things. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I invite anybody to connect with me there. Just search for Greg Kihlström. I think there's only one Greg Kihlström on LinkedIn. So easy enough to find as long as you can spell my last name. And then go to my website. You can find all my books there and find my podcast, The Agile Brand, there as well. So it's gregkihlstrom.com.
Thanks, Greg. And other thing is, if you're interested in talking about any of these things, feel free to reach for either of us, or we're both actually happy to talk with you together. So, definitely welcome the conversation. And I always enjoy collaborating with Greg, admire what he's doing, and I think you get a lot out of talking to him. So I encourage you to follow him and to reach out to us. Thanks, Greg, for taking the time today. It's been a lot of fun. Always enjoy our conversations, and I'm sure that you sparked a lot of great ideas for our audience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.